Well, we'll get started. I'm Kat, and I've got the absolute pleasure of moderating this discussion today, and I also have the pleasure of being on Justin's board. So, thanks everybody for coming. I think the world of him, and I'm so excited for all of you to hear his story as well. So, you've got many claims to fame, but my favorite is that you're a serial entrepreneur. So, I would just love to hear, like, when did you get that itch to be starting businesses? Like, when did it start?
Yeah, the real irony is it started in fourth grade for me. Game Boy was a hot thing back then, and my family didn't necessarily have the means to purchase a Game Boy for me. And but they did say, hey, you can earn some money and work hard to get it. And my parents weren't going to pay it for me, so I actually on the back of the Boys Life magazine, they had these like incentives where you could earn $2 for every item you sold, and they presented the options that you could buy there. And so eventually I was like, okay, I'll just earn some money, and I started selling stuff. And that transitioned into eventually doing some lawn service, like mowing people's lawns. And then I got some friends into it, so that I took a cut of every lawn they mowed. And eventually just kind of started learning more about how I could generate revenue with companies as I grew like that. So that was really where it started.
So, what was the game on the Game Boy?
It was
Yeah.
Zelda.
Zelda.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Everybody needs some Link in their life. And I mean, since the fourth grade, you've started quite a few companies. 5+ bootstrapped. Want to just give a high level overview of those?
Yeah, I've always hated the term lifestyle businesses, but that's what they technically are called, I guess. But really, the idea was when I was in college and I was working on the first like real business that had an entity behind it. I was working in computer engineering and wanted to put together a way that you could have voice-activated interactions with computers. And so I put together a process between basically eliminating the sound that a microphone was picking up from the speakers, so you could actually have really loud music playing and still talk to the computer. And so I ended up building a little home automation system with other parts around at the time, and ended up selling that to a subsidiary of Cox Cable in 2007. So that gave me this like, hey, I was 23 years old, 22 years old, whatever. So I had this ego out of that, right? I was like, hey, I just sold a company. I'm in college. I was at the University of Florida, which isn't really this tech scene, right? So I kind of thought I was like this bigwig, right? And so then I went on to thinking, hey, I moved out to Utah from Florida and thought that I'd be able to start a video streaming service, and this was 2007 now. And I pitched my idea to all kinds of VCs at the time. The VC market here wasn't very big. Tried pitching it in Texas and California, or Colorado, couldn't get anybody's attention in California, and eventually just wasn't able to get that off the ground. But I spent all the money that I had gotten from selling my previous business. So now I was like, what am I going to do? And in that random minute of trying to figure out, I was on a airplane and saw a napkin that had Delta printed on it, right? And I was like, why don't I just print ads on napkins and give them away free places, and I become this middleman. And I kind of transitioned into the story of my next business and doing ad sales and a little ad agency. And that each of these businesses, and I won't go into all of them unless you want me to. There's too long of a story, I think, there. But
Yeah, we got time. So whatever you feel comfortable with, we want to hear it.
I ran that until 2009, and the economy had been tanking and became really hard to do ad sales during that time period. And so then the randomest thing I got into and will never get back into, and if anybody's in retail, I apologize, but I will never get into retail again. I did manufactured sandals in the Philippines, imported those and tried to sell those, and the choices between what sizes to have, how many to have of this style and color were just insane. And so that was also one. I ended up selling it. It was during the social entrepreneur time, and so I actually sold it back to the family in the Philippines that was making the sandals, because they were able to sell them online and ship them, and did well. So moving on, then I kind of got into just doing services with accounting. So we would, using similar people and connections in the Philippines, we would have our customers scan documents, and then we'd input them into QuickBooks, and then we had a CPA who'd review those, and ended up going on. I was able to sell that company, and so the process just kind of was build these companies, get them to a few $100,000 in revenue, and then turn around and sell them, take the money from that, build another company, right? And so in short story, there was a couple more in there, but then I went on in 2012. I was looking for what my next thing was going to be, and a ad agency here locally was looking for somebody that could help with databases and building customer interactions. And so I ended up partnering with them and building up a reminder program for Jiffy Lube and sending out postcards and email there. And that really opened the door and the gate for me to see, like, hey, there's a big opportunity, a big market here. And so I basically went on and departed our partnership there and went on and built Cinch into something that was bigger.
I love just the stories as you're telling them how one is weaving into the other. Yeah. And I think you identifying the moment to sell and capitalize on that business and then use that to put your learnings to work. Is that a fair summary of?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And that leads us to Cinch, a very different business than sandals.
Yes.
So, you gave a little bit of a summary of what you're up to with Cinch, but yeah, tell us more about what you're up to there.
Yeah. So really just the idea was we set out to try to do this in 2016. I was still running the previous business and part of that, but the idea was to do something grander and bigger than with Jiffy Lube. And so we actually got in 2017, maybe 2018. I should have pulled up my numbers and looked down, but we ended up picking up Oxy Fresh Carpet Cleaning, a corporate deal with them, and doing the very similar thing we were doing with Jiffy Lube. And so I was able to prove that the market and what we were doing in analyzing consumer behavior, when do we predict somebody is going to, in this case, be ready for a carpet cleaning versus due for an oil change. And if you can market to the people at the right time, you really have the ability to spend more money focused on those people and get more money back in your ROI and in your marketing spend. And so that was what we were really focused on. And being able to put the data science behind in doing that. So we had a great proof of concept in that outside of what we had with Jiffy Lube. And the other problem that I ran into in that Jiffy Lube business was how we would always have a franchisee that would be like, well, I want to do this campaign differently, right? And so we'd go into the code and we'd have to parse out this little journey, this separate process for them, and try to figure out how do we now make sure that doesn't mess up everybody else's, and then we deploy that, and then we get it out, right? But then 6 months later, they'd be like, well, I want to try to change that again, right? And so we were constantly just reinventing these processes for them. And in the process of thinking about what I was going to do next, it was how do we solve that problem? How do we make it so we can have the data science here, but we can have the flexibility for people to then figure out what works better with their data and how they interact with their customers. And so in building Cinch, we decided, hey, we need to have this flexible journey building process that allows our customers to very quickly iterate on their own processes, which is the core of data science, right? Is being able to iterate and change that and see how the impact changed it. And so that was the gist of getting started.
Yeah. You've got such it's a rare mind that's as technical as you are and as product oriented as you, and also loves the go-to-market side. If you had to pick which one you want to nurture, you're glad you nurtured early, which one would it be?
I think that you've got to nurture the go-to-market early, but I think if you don't have a good product, it's hard to go to market. And so naturally, I am product focused. Everybody at Cinch will probably know how much I love sales, but the truth is that when I looked at the fact we had 3 product centered co-founders at Cinch, and I basically drew the short straw as the one that was going to go out and figure out how to sell the product, right? And in that process, I basically I was like, every deal I close, I want to ensure is going to stay for as long as possible, because I don't want to be constantly trying to find more and more. And so we really focus on how do we have good market fit. So when we actually got to launch the product in 2019, we spent most of 2019 focused on that product market fit. We'd pick up customers, but it was a pretty slow process with that, mostly just through network connections and associations that we had. But the idea was like, let's figure out with them, how do we find the value and stick to that. And that was the difference between product and sales.
Yeah, that's great. So Cinch is a venture-backed business, and you talked a little bit about you wanted to go bigger this time. Yeah. I mean, you successfully bootstrapped and exited quite a few. So walk us through that thinking. Just like, why take on venture? Why do it a little bit different this time?
Yeah, I think, the really awesome part was when Chris London, our CTO and co-founder on the team, he's a phenomenal developer, and nobody try to steal him, please, because we love having him here. He probably won't leave, but he's probably one of the best developers in Utah, and he put together some really awesome stuff as we were building the product, and as we were going that direction, it was really built the product. You could see the vision, the opportunity, that this wasn't just something that you do and you go a short distance, right? And so we decided it was time to swing for the fences. It was time to really put something out there, and that's what we're still swinging for. And so in order to do that, we recognized that we weren't going to just do that off of the capital that the three of us could back, right? And we did have, from previous exits, had the opportunity to put some good money in ourselves, but it was one of those where you need a lot more resources to make something like that happen and to accomplish our goals with it.
2019 wasn't 2020, but a little bit different fundraising environment than now. Walk us through that first fundraise.
Yeah, we actually didn't do well we did a little friends and family in 2020. And so we ended up in 2020, we did a convertible note. We raised about $500,000 and just did that from, it was maybe 6 people, I think, 7 people. It was a very small group of people. And so that we used that capital to get Jared into the company full time and really get focused on trying to make something happen. And hiring our first people on payroll. And then in 2021 is when we basically said, okay, 2021, we've got to go from, we're about 200,000 in ARR, we got to get to $1 million in ARR, because everybody told us that's what we had to do in order to get any attention from VC. And so, it was a big learning year and trying to make that happen. COVID was still trying to wrap up and get life back to normal. But the conversations were we would have a lot of first conversations, right? People would talk to us, even after we got past $1 million. And I was just kind of floored by that. I was like, we hit $1 million. Like, what else do people want? And yeah, I felt like we had good product market fit. We had very low churn at that time. I don't even know if we'd lost anybody in the automotive space that we were focused on during that time. And so I really don't know what it was, but in the end, we ended up. Tim Hansen, who was at the time with Weave, had left and was working with Dan Thuet and John O'Castleton at Lionel. And they came in, they saw the product, they saw our traction, and they were willing to take a shot on us. So Lionel led our seed round, and we raised capital with them, and Cultivation Capital came in and joined us as well. They probably would have led if we raised a little bit later, because they were in fund transition, but they ended up investing and falling on there.
And you put that money to work. I won't ask you to share your numbers unless you want to, but they are impressive numbers. So just talk about, how did you put that money to work? Where did you make investments? And what was the conversation with your team as to the outcome that you wanted from the investment that was now coming in?
Yeah, so we definitely strategized with that before we raised the capital, right? So we knew where we wanted to, and the idea was how do we get the sales off of me? I didn't want to do that as much anymore, right? How do we get that into a team and start building on? So really, it was about building the team, figuring out who we needed on the team, how to start putting that team together, and that was some of the biggest things that we needed to do. We did have our goals on the product, again, to add more value for the customers that we had and see if we could increase the value that we got from each customer, which we very much did, right? Our average contract price, I don't even know off the top of my head, I think it's safe to say it doubled maybe even tripled in the 2 years we were running there.
So fast forward to recently, we closed it this year?
December.
Yeah, last year. And I know what day it is. And I can say, as you know, I was not at Kickstart at the time, but we got a look at it. And luckily, you know, we have good partner, a really cool program called Campus Founders Fund. And they didn't miss it when Kickstart did. And so we were able to stay updated on just how things were progressing. And I mean, it's very impressive what you've been able to do with that initial investment. And you really could have raised from anybody with the traction that you've had. So walk us through how you think about cap table composition and who you bring to the table and why.
Yeah, if I can put a plug in there for Campus Founders Fund really quick, because that was during that convertible note we raised, they were actually the first institutional check that we got, right? And so that was a pretty cool feeling. That when Matt Smith was the one, he's like, yeah, and I can't remember who else, Clayton maybe was the name, I seem to recall. We're on that team, and so we were working with them, and it was definitely a surreal feeling to be like, well, I mean, it wasn't even a big check, but it was like somebody from an institutional group is willing to invest some money here in this product. And yeah, it did. Built that connection and relationship with Kickstart. But and then what was the actual
Just, you know, as you raised this latest round, how did you think about who to bring in? Because you could have raised from anybody.
Yeah, we did. It was it was a very interesting time when, you know, other people I'd be talking to were struggling to raise capital, and we, you know, I think we ended up, I talked to 48 different funds at that time, and at the end it became like people were trying to just, hey, you can pitch us, talk to us, right? And it was very, very odd going from the seed round where I was like struggling to just have anybody listen to me, and at that point it was like, stop emailing me. I don't want to.
We're falling all over ourselves to get your attention.
Yeah. And it was a very odd feeling, but I think that the biggest thing that became really valuable in that and was that relationship with Campus Founders Fund, and put a lot of props out there for Matt Smith and his reaching out, and he's like, hey, you know, because I think you guys weren't even on the radar because. But then Matt talked to me, and he's like, oh, yeah, we need to talk, and got on the radar pretty quick. And I think for us, when we were thinking about who did we want to have that relationship with, right, we had funds from Boston and California and Colorado, and you name the spectrum that we'd been talking to, and some of those we were pretty close. In fact, a couple firms in Boston we'd been talking to for 6 months or so, and really when it came down to us making that decision, one, we had to know that the numbers were going to work out, right, and that was a key part. But it was really important that the fund that we took money from was going to be somebody that could help us in raising future funds, right, and somebody that had a potential that whoever was going to be on the board, and in your case, was somebody that we could work with, right? We have a very good board now. Our dynamics work really well. We have great relationship and radical candor, and we needed to be able to continue to have that. And so, as we were getting down to those term sheets and figuring out who we wanted to actually have those conversations with, it was going through that process. So as you and I, you obviously know, but for everybody here, I'd actually go to lunch or breakfast, or I'd go out and I'd sit down and I'd talk to the potential board members that were going to be on our board or would be potential for that role. And I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to know how they were going to interact with our board, help us make strategic decisions. What are they going to be able to provide outside of just the cash that they were going to invest in? And so those were some of the things that were pretty key.
Yeah, and the funny part about this, so we were chasing this deal because it's a beautiful company and business that Justin has built. And Matt, like the way that our fund is structured, I get to, my role is as a general partner, and I do sourcing, but I also rely really heavily on, some other members of the team. And I was so pumped because I was at a dinner and Justin was there, and I was like, you guys, we have to chase this deal. You won't believe what he shared. it's fantastic. And Matt's like, oh yeah, I've been working that relationship forever. So I was like so proud of myself of like, I found a winner. And Matt had already been working it and had already met with you the week before, I think. So I was really proud of myself for absolutely no reason. But we were working hard to win this deal, and I had a breakfast with Justin, and for some reason, I sleep through every alarm on like a day where I'm like, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna flaunt, I'm gonna be the best, like I'm gonna win this deal at breakfast. And I sleep through where I'm like 5 minutes away from when it's starting. And so I show up to that breakfast like no makeup, high bun, yoga pants, and like you got to see me as I am. And he, yeah, luckily he was still willing to work with me.
It totally
Yeah.
made it
Yeah.
real, right? I'll tell you funny, that dinner though, I don't know if I've told you this before, but that dinner, I was invited by another VC group to be there that we were talking
Oh yeah,
to.
they're not, they let me know.
Oh, there you go. But the even more funny thing was the reason I actually was like, yeah, I'll be there was because I knew that a person I wanted to be a VP of sales on our team and to recruit on our team was there. And so we did. Stan James was at Spiff at the time, and I wanted to go and get to know him a little bit better. So that was a very eventful dinner.
Yeah, the VC who hosted that, yeah, they gave me quite an earful for sneaking in there. Yeah, but I mean, they knew who they were working with when they did that. So incredible growth. You're so thoughtful, both about cap table composition, like team as well. Stan being such an exceptional example of that. You know, he's got a track record, not just in his execution, but at certain stages. So maybe walk us through that decision to hire Stan. I think it's a great example just of how you think about team.
Yeah. Yeah, so at the same time we were hiring Stan, we were also hiring for a leader for our CS team, and we got JP Scoville, and I think it was really great to be hiring both those at the same time. One thing I'll say for any entrepreneur, if you want to learn about a specific role, just go out and start trying to hire for that role, because you got to put together the job rec. As you put together the job rec, you've got to think about what do I need? What do I want? What problems do I need solved? What are the problems in that space that I need? And it was really great to start to think about what holes did we have? What did we need in that person? What experience did they need to have previously? And that was something that was really key, was finding people that have had that experience. And then, as any entrepreneur that's started to grow a company has understood, is when you hire somebody into a company as small as a startup is, they have to have that experience. They have to know. And so for me, it was really key that somebody had the experience of building a company from where we were at in our ARR at the time and growing it up well past where we wanted to be. And so that target needed to give me at least the 3-year window. I wanted somebody that could come in that had that experience before, and both with Stan and JP, they'd both done it 3 times before. And so it gave us, it gives me a lot more confidence. And now as I see that they've been here, it's now 4 months but with JP and 3 for Stan. And you can see those processes in them, right? They know what to do at a company our size. They know the ambiguity that you're going to have and the things that you have to overcome, but these are the processes that we need first. And they're not constantly like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, right? And becoming inundated by the obstacles that might come from that.
Yeah, Stan was like, I want to have a meeting with you, and I can get your feedback on stuff. And he laid out his plan, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, yeah, cool. I love it. And there was absolutely zero that I brought to that. And I pride myself on being really great at go-to-market, really good at just like sales in a SaaS organization. And Stan was like, he's just light years ahead of me. And so but that's who you hire. And I also have an anecdote of when you were looking for this, for the CX role, I think you had just pitched our investment committee. And afterwards, it was you and I and Gavin, he's the founder and another general partner at Kickstart. And Gavin was like, well, where can we help you hire? And you said CX, and Gavin's like, oh yeah, it's a tough role for the stage that you're at. And you immediately were like, no, here's all the people I have in pipeline. Here's exactly what I'm hiring for. And like, I'm going to get this done within the next 3 weeks. And then when you left, Gavin was like, I am in love with him. he is so on top of it. But I do think it's just so impressive how you think about it, about building the team, but also how hard you go to work for it. Like I struggle to build a job spec, and you know exactly who you want in terms of capability for this stage, and it's something that I wish I could clone across, you know, every company with which I'm able to interact. You're also really great at data. We were sitting down, it was even prior to like us getting to a deal, and you said, I got to show you something. And you pulled up your dashboards, and I teared up. I literally teared up. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. So talk us through how you approach data and data presentation, because it truly is at the caliber of what I would expect at growth, even late stage. So yeah.
Well, it would be hard if we were a data science company who didn't have our own data. So that would be, but no, we, yeah, I mean, I have to make all those decisions based on data, right? You know, sometimes I'm embarrassed to do this, and it'll be the first time I actually admit this publicly, but I actually, when I was dating, put together a dating pool and an algorithm to help me understand how to date, and I realized I was dating wrong. I was dating the wrong people that I wasn't looking for in a long-term relationship, right? And so that's the way I kind of think about everything, is the idea that what do I need to do to find, because all of those traits, everything that you're doing is in some data point, right? Whether it's an emotion or whether it's not, and we can figure out how that is. And so in thinking through those processes, which became part of the foundation of Cinch, we needed to think through the same thing in our operations, right? And so every data point that we can, we're trying to track, we're looking for, and we put together those reports. And so if I needed to make an important decision, I didn't just have to go off my gut, right? My data needed to get me at least 80% there, and if I could get to 80%, I could then let the gut fall on the rest of it. And so we would, yeah, that's basically our operation, and it really helps when Jared, co-founder at Cinch, also is very data centric, and so we will just ask, what's the data say? Let's go find the data, and it's really great that JP and Stan are on our team with the same type of mindset. Our VP of marketing, Amy, is also very data centric, and so I think that's something that we look for is people that have that. And we're really excited. We just hired Carlos Kamini from, he is our VP of data now, and he's very data centric, obviously.
Yeah, it made me tear up. And then I tweeted about it, and Jason Lemkin, who is like the father of SaaS, was like, yeah, there's nothing like it. And Dave Kellogg, a brilliant go-to-market mind, is at Balderton Capital. Like the way that all of the VCs were geeking out over the love of dashboards. But you know why? It's because we know that you understand your business, all the pieces of it, how they interact, and that just having that as a core discussion point can be such a game changer, because things are so quick in how they move and how they evolve. And if you don't have that in front of you, it's so hard to make decisions quickly. Yeah. So how do you utilize those dashboards in your executive and even company-wide conversations?
Yeah, we're actually putting together a whole new plan on this right now, so it's definitely top of mind. And I'm actually really excited because as a founder, you don't necessarily always have the time to put together the data. And I joke that my Netflix time for most people is I build reports and analyze something, right? So that's what I've been doing in the past, but you still don't have the time to put together the data that you want. So we now have a business analyst, and it's really great because we are building out reports and we're putting those together. And so I think that it's really key to be able to have that data available. You know, We've just barely started doing a broader all-hands team as we've gotten a little bit bigger, and we're showing all of our numbers to the team there and being able to display that. We have dashboards and tools that we have between Zoho reports and Power BI, where we have all of that data available and working on that. So one thing I'm really excited about is the new budget reports that we have for our, and I could totally geek out on data, but the budget reports that we now have for our team, and I'm going to get to present that to them at our next executive meeting and show them how they can really dive into and see how the budget's going for different portions. So it's just really making it available, having it. The number one thing is you got to have good, clean data, and you've got to have it put together. And I like giving props to our team, but we've got a really great controller who keeps our financial data in immaculate order, which makes it really easy to then be able to analyze and compare with our forecasts. So.
Yeah, I hope all of you were hearing what I got so jazzed about and why I would willingly show up with no makeup and yoga pants to make sure that I won him over. Discipline. So disciplined in every aspect of how you run your business. You are so efficient too. I think why he got so excited about the budget reports is like you are intentional with every dollar that's spent. How do you instill that culture in your team? Because I think one of the downsides that we saw is you can get a little, people can get a little wild when you've got a lot of cash on your balance sheet, through maybe an infusion from venture capital. Growth at all costs was definitely a craze that was happening. That's not what I see in you at all. And that doesn't just happen because you're that way. It's because your team understands and knows that too. So how do you infuse that in your culture?
Yeah, I think first it comes from the fact that all the previous businesses that I got my paycheck based off of what was our net profit, right? I'd get paid that way, so I'd want to encourage, the idea and the mindset is entirely where I'm at right now. And I've actually joked with our team that in being CEO and somewhat of CFO, because we don't have a CFO yet, right? It's sometimes this battle like Gollum and Smeagol arguing in Lord of the Rings between each other, right? Well, let's go spend all this money so we can grow as fast as we can, but no, you got to keep the money back, right? And you're kind of going back and forth on that. And so it really is constantly kind of balancing between that and having those conversations, right? And I do appreciate that with my executive team and our founding team, we can have those conversations and really talk through it. But I think on top of that is one of the things to really think about is until you actually know all your unit economics and you know what your dollar to return is, there's no way that you can go out and just say, hey, we're going to spend a ton of money unless you're like, I don't care about my cap table and I don't care if I'm going to go take some dilution and we're going to get some growth. And, it becomes a matter of really thinking about how is our go-to-market and our product working together to be able to actually know where we're at? And that's something that we're still striving to figure out and figure exactly where we can end up. And once we get to that point, we know, hey, we can pour more money into here. We have more money for some research and development here, and we can grow from that aspect.
I mean, there's so many things that I could geek out over just the way that you also are managing the board to that end. We've got a text thread, and I think it was Monday you sent out just here's performance. And of course I tear up a little because one, performance is beautiful, but also the fact that you're just so on the numbers and you're answering our questions before we can even ask them. It really is just so wonderful to work with you. And I'll open it up to Q&A after this last question from me. But just what keeps you energized to have, built and sold and now be doing the venture-backed journey? Like, that's tiring. So how do you keep energized and motivated?
I don't know about the energy part, but I go home to my kids and then I lose all of the energy. But no, for me right now at Cinch, our product, I get jazzed about our product because it's awesome. We've built something really cool. It can do a lot of really powerful things and solve a lot of problems. And so that's something that really gets me excited. It's like, how do we get this out to more people? How can we solve more of the problems that they have in communicating with their customers and understanding when's the right time and not wasting their own money on marketing dollars in different places? So that's the number one thing that gets me pumped. And then we've got a really great team. It's fun. Like we're an in-office team, and it's fun to be there. And on the days when I'm less stressed, being able to just be in there and chatting with people and get to know. Or we've got random little competitions that are going around in the office. It's fun to be part of. So those are the things that get me pumped.
That's awesome. Maybe the last one from me. Just any advice? You said. The bug bit you back in the 4th grade. Any advice for young or aspiring entrepreneurs, what they could do to maybe get started?
Just try, you got to step out your door and give it a try. That's really the first thing. And then you're going to fall, you're going to mess up, you're going to have mistakes, but you got to learn from those, figure out what they are and figure out how to keep moving forward, right? Figure out what motivates you and then just keep trying.
Well, I just feel lucky to work with you, and I'm so happy to been able to ask questions for you to share, both with this group and beyond. So with that, we'll turn it over to all of you to ask your questions.
Yeah, so I always love hearing about any sort of existential moments that you had, whether it was at Cinch or your other companies. I think I heard Brock Blake at Lendio refer to it as kind of the fetal moment where you're lying on the floor, scrunched up, wondering if the company's still going to be there next week, and if you just faced any hardship of that magnitude, and if so, how you overcame that. And then the second one, kind of more tongue-in-cheek, you referred to kind of the algorithm that you made to date. And so is there kind of a dating app in the pipeline? You could call it Clinch or something.
Clinch.
Yes, Clinch. Yeah, no, on the first one, in previous businesses, there wasn't ever really the fetal moment, but there's definitely been maybe one or two of those in reality at Cinch. And we actually joke in some of our cultures now we call it Burrito Day. We had a day when we were tiny. We hadn't even raised we hadn't raised any capital yet. We were trying to figure out what to do, and this was back in really early days. There's nobody full time, and our software accidentally sent out several 100,000 accidental free burritos to customers across Colorado and other parts of the country, and we ended up spending about $13,000 that day, and for a company that wasn't even making $13,000 a year. So it was a pretty rough day, and now we celebrate when we've had a year since any burrito instances at Cinch. And so so those types of things, while they're tough in the moment, we've now pulled that into part of our culture. Is if we have a moment where we make a big enough mistake in the product that we have to cover the costs on that, we end up calling that a burrito day. And then if we go a year or on the anniversary of burrito days, we actually celebrate by having a whole bunch of burritos in the office for lunch. So that's the first question. Second one, no, I don't think there's going to be a dating app coming out because I don't need it anymore, and that problem's solved. But I would say just the thing I did learn from that data was, again, I was not spending my time in the right places and with the right people, and so I had to identify those traits of what I actually was looking for as I was dating, and then and figure out how to date in the right places.
If I understand correctly, then you moved from Florida to Utah.
Yep.
Sometime years ago.
Yep.
When I look at the weather today, I go, why did you do that? But anyway, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
I'm an implant too as well, and I love it. But I wanted to know why Utah and not the other 49 states back whenever you moved here. What attracted you to the market, the workforce, and everything that still keeps you here? You're raising a family here, for what I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, when I moved here, it was originally after I moved out, the software market was here. There was a software company I was interested in learning some things from and working with, and so that's what pulled me out here originally. The allure was also the cost of living was cheaper here than it was in Florida at the time. I think that's probably not the case today. But I definitely miss the beaches. I miss the rivers and water, but I love the mountains. And then I got married out here, and my wife's from here, and so I'm probably never going to end up moving.
So Kat alluded to how great of a founder you are from a board dynamic, but could you talk about building your board and how you leverage your board strategically as a founder?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually think that I've been incredibly blessed in my board. My board consists of Paul Brown, Tim Hansen, Kat Kennedy, and one of our co-founders, Jared Rich. We make up the board, and we have a pretty good dynamic where we recognize that our conversations about business are not personal when we have to have those harder conversations, and that becomes really valuable. And the experience between everybody on the board is very eclectic, and so it gives us the opportunity to have a lot more experience and conversations that come to the table. And so that's really an important thing, is I think being able to have the hard conversations, and I definitely can say there's times in board meetings when I was embarrassed and not wanting to share certain information or go those directions. And I've had some pretty ugly board meetings from that aspect. But I know that the rest of the board, we're all looking to figure out how do we make this make Cinch what we want to make it. And I think that having that dynamic with everybody is really important.
Okay, and so what was embarrassing, though? Was it that you were trying to hide something that was going on, or
no, more that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know the answers, and I didn't know how to get those answers, and I was trying to. It's one of those times. It was actually our October board meeting. Our last October board meeting was probably my most embarrassing one, just because I didn't know. I was not necessarily the most optimistic about some of the processes that we had gone down, and I didn't know what the next process was, and it was right at the time when we were having a board meeting, and so I had to present not knowing these things, and it's never feels good to be in a spot where you're like, well, I don't even have the answer, I don't even have the idea of the direction right now. So, but our board was there to basically say, okay, this is how we should approach this at this point, and it worked out really great. I think we ended up raising capital. We ended up finding new leadership. We ended up going down a really, really positive path. And in fact, if I just plug in, I think we went from the worst board meeting we ever had to the best board meeting we ever had in our last board meeting. So, yeah.
You're also so good at just calling. You just pick up the phone and call. You don't sit in the struggle too much on your own. Like, you'll call. So you can get out of your own head, I think, which is a great way to be managing the board dynamic, is just working with them.
Yeah. I definitely don't believe, that I'm the smartest person by any means, and I don't know everything, and that's something that's really, I think, valuable in that aspect, is I will call people. Like, I'll reach out to anybody I can, and Kat's just barely scratching the surface of it. She might get bored of it or tired of it pretty soon, but
I love to share my opinions.
there you go.
I also think you do it very well where you ask for opinions, you ask for feedback, but you are the one that makes the decision. Yeah. And so you'll get our various perspectives on it, and then you'll come back with, and here is what I have decided, rather than letting that whiplash you, which is a talent, because I think sometimes when we're exhausted and in a moment of unknown, we can take feedback as truth versus like, okay, I'm going to take this into account and then decide. And you're very good at using the various perspectives, but you own the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Justin. Question for you on technology. Have you guys embraced AI? And if you have, what tools are you using? And maybe you could share what your strategy is there.
Yeah, we actually set out to, when we, before AI was the hot thing and really, everybody's buzz, we built Cinch around a way that we could analyze the data in a way that an AI could ingest that, and so it's pretty valuable for us. And that was actually the number one reason that we raised capital. Now we actually had a good amount of cash and capital or runway last year, but we decided that we wanted to get a jump on things. We had enough data. Building AI models, you need a lot of data, so it's not very feasible when you're a smaller company with very little data, at least in what we were doing, to be able to put that data together. But now we'd gotten to that point. So we do have, right now, Carlos is our new VP of data. He's implementing things with OpenAI, with Anthropic, and Microsoft's Copilot, and we're working on putting things together with that.
And are you guys using RAG, the technology?
I don't think that we've actually got anything with that right now, but I've heard it being tossed around in the office.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. So from hearing that you have a computer engineering background, it sounds like you didn't have really the professional, like going to the university to gain a business sense. I'm interested in hearing your path to kind of getting that business sense and learning what you needed to be successful in business.
Yeah, that might actually be something I left out on that. After I sold that company, I bailed on computer engineering because, again, I thought I was a hot shot and I wanted to get out of school as quick as I could. I was actually ready to bail on school altogether. My mom actually begged me. We had multiple conversations about staying in school and just getting a degree. And so I actually switched to marketing because I could get a marketing degree in 3 more semesters and be done and out. And so that did end up giving me some of the business experience. And also, one of my favorite classes was consumer behavior in that, which has come out a lot in what we're doing at Cinch. So that gave me that experience. But I think if I were to talk a lot about, business experience, the best way to get it is to get out and try to do it. Listen to some podcasts, but go out and try to start a business, and you're gonna mess up, and you're gonna learn how to really do a lot better, and your business acumen's gonna expand.
Thank you.
I'm curious, when you get an epiphany or an idea for a killer app or a product, company, service, value stream, whatever, you were mentioning that like we shouldn't go steal your CTO. If you had to start over right now with your idea from scratch, no capital, your 0 day, how do you find that partner that's that valuable to in the beginning you got to bootstrap until you're able to raise capital. How do you do that? How did you find him? Yeah, so I'm actually really sad that the website Angel List is gone. I don't know. I see a lot of people nodding their heads on that one. I mean, it still exists, but it's not in the format it was before. Angel List was a site where you could go where you're looking for co-founders, and you could say, hey, I'm willing to give X% of the company and payment. Come join. And so that's actually where I found Chris, was connecting through there, and I met a lot of people on that. I don't know if I were looking today where I would go to find something like that. In the past, I would just pull from my network and constantly network. But I did. It took us a good almost 2 years to find Chris and build what we needed to build. But we were very particular about what we needed to do and who we were going to have on that team.
Awesome. Well, a huge thank you to you,
Thank you
for sharing your wisdom today, and thanks to all of you for joining us.